of times. Too much weed. It's hilarious, laugh out loud.
Oh, it is.
Good commentary, vendor relations.
The meeting is live streaming.
Yes.
It might be what you said.
Well,
it is one I was waiting for our secretary, but he should be on the elevator on his way up. So I will call this meeting to order. Welcome to our October FEC meeting. Again, thank you all for being here. And again, thank you for being here in person. I really appreciate that. We will get our roll call started when Michael shows up. As I said, he's in an elevator on his way, but I think we definitely have quorum. So I think we're only missing one person.
Sherry not coming?
Oh, no, she said, oh, I just got a text. She's on her way.
Oh, okay, I started saying she did more than me.
She's in the building anyway, right? So that's.
So Michael, you can just take call as you sit down. This one's just for the meeting. We will move on to approval of the minutes from our last meeting, September 5th. Excuse me, any comments or changes to the minutes? All right, so now we need a motion to approve.
No.
Second.
Oh, motion?
Almost. Oh, okay, you want
I have a
second.
motion, and then you team seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, next order of business are my comments. I don't have very much to say right now. I will have a few things in under new business when we get there. But the only thing I really have to report is I went to the Board of Trustees meeting 2 weeks ago. Myself and Barb McCracken, who is the Senate President for SIUE, who's also a microbiologist, which is kind of nice.
Oh, that's kind of good.
Yeah, we presented the system award, that cross system award that I mentioned last week. And it was a fascinating process. I hadn't been to a board meeting live, so that was really educational. But really, that's the only thing I have to report this month. So with that, we can move on to our committee reports. Starting with, again, myself, which, again, I will have more things to discuss in new business. We can move on then to our election committee, Elaine.
So we have now 4 positions that we are looking to elect new senators for. And we're in process. I was hoping that it would be complete by now, but it's taking me a little bit longer than I had planned. I guess I'm just an overachiever and I forget that the process takes time. So it's
An optimist.
yeah, so I thought I had it nailed down, and then we had a resignation of a senator from our college. So back to the drawing board with that, and then I'm still looking for nominations to replace Dr. Davey. So hopefully next meeting, next week I might even have more update, but a different revised update. But by next month's meeting, I hope that it's all. That's my report.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it is a much longer process than it seems. It truly is, and the time goes by really fast. So I want to move on to UEPC. One thing I do want to mention before we get started is you'll notice there were no resolutions attached to the information that was sent to you. That is because for this body, we do not need to approve a resolution. This body is to set the agenda for next week's meeting. And because it has gone through committee and the committee has already decided this is the resolution going forward, we can just communicate that to the meeting next week. And in that meeting, just as a reminder, I did a little bit of a deep dive into this. When the resolutions are brought up, they need to be motioned, but they do not need to be seconded because, again, as having come up through committee, the assumption is that there are committee members that approve, so therefore it's an automatic second. So just sort of to clarify some things sort of going forward. So then for UEPC, I'm gonna leave it up to Jeff if you want, how he wants to communicate his information going forward to the
Sure. Thank you. So yeah, there are four RMEs. They're all sort of interrelated RMEs related to cannabis science coming out of horticulture. The UEPC had no questions or comments, and these were approved without much concern and are going to be recommended for approval by the Senate. I will not be attending. I will be unable to attend the next meeting. So Gary is going to manage these for us. But yeah, we recommend their approval. They were all shared with you by. Sorry, we just had a major event over at the Student Center, and I've been up since. Yeah, they were shared by Josh. So if there are any questions, we're happy to entertain them, but we don't foresee these being challenging.
Are there any questions for Jeff or in regards to the resolutions?
Yeah,
So Jeff, you will not be there next week.
I will not be there.
Do you have a designee to represent UEPC?
Gary Apscar.
Oh,
Are there any other questions? All right, then we can move on to the budget committee.
So the budget committee met, talked a little bit about what we want to work on this year. We're gonna do some of the research on, just to get some descriptive data on school directors, how many there are and how many months they're working, and maybe take it from there and maybe interview a couple about what they do in the summer with their time. So a little bit of research related to Eugene's original question about school directors being 11 and 12 months appointments. We are going to either get new HR data or we're going to use last year's data just to take a first initial stab to do a gender equity examination of the salary data. Since last year we did salary compression. That was about rank and compression based on when you were hired. So we're going to use that data to the extent that we can to do a little bit of a gender equity examination there. And then we've thought about putting off on any notion of doing the peer equity study until spring and potentially doing it with one university, one college, and one college here, if we can find a university that enough people agree on is a peer institution. And we'll kind of first see how the salary compression consultants interactions go before we do that, and potentially could ask the consulting firm also about a peer institution. It's a thought we had. So we haven't done any work yet, but we did meet, and that's what our plans are. Yeah.
Any questions on to the budget?
yeah, Rachel, are you still working with provost office about the faculty internal equity adjustment or? Yeah,
That my understanding is once the consultant firm is hired, then we'll be brought into the conversation, but that's happening with Bethany and maybe Jeff and the chancellor. So I have no word on the.
So where is it now? Do you guys have any information about update with regards to?
You know, I have the report from Mike from last spring that he gave to the provost, but I believe it was not Provost Tucker. I believe it was the interim provost. And then I also got all the data sets from Mike for all the different colleges so that I have them so that we can look at them with the consultant firm as we're allowed to. So no, there's been no updates.
Do you guys usually every semester, okay, there is a meeting, the financial budget planning committee, you should be invited to them. The president of faculty senate should be invited, but for the past year, it was inactive. So
I can tell you, I was invited to join that committee. So I will be on the chancellor's planning and budgetary committee this year. They haven't scheduled the proceed.
so you have not made you.
Yeah, we're gonna schedule this.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
There's a question there first.
Just real quick, who decides this, or chooses this, firm?
So, as far as I know, that is done at the administrative level. I have no further information, but that's something you can ask today.
When you're looking at the program directors, can you also look at the program coordinators? Because I heard that some programs coordinators are paid and some are not paid.
And
And
What
also,
is-
what pool of money is used to pay, the program coordinators?
And what is a program coordinator now? Because school directors are the top of the school.
They are kind of between, the old department chairs. So in schools, we used to have different departments.
Yes.
So the coordinator is coordinating that basically on department.
Okay, so we don't have that in my school, so I'm not aware that we have what we have. We have chairs with a lowercase c for each faculty committee for each program that was put into the school. So I'm not aware of there being program coordinators.
You're not gonna get that from HR. So program coordinator, so a director is gonna show up differently in the HR documentation, but a program coordinator won't. Program coordinator is just gonna show up as purely faculty. So that would be it's a deeper level of analysis you'd have to do.
Because their appointment has no, they're not administratively appointed at all, the program coordinators, whereas the school directors.
Yes, I think I agree. I think if each unit has their own operating paper. I cannot speak arguments for psychology, program directors, very much straight faculty members.
But on the contract, like the summer contract, do they not list out program director? Like, so. I know on mine it was, so that's why. There may be a way of getting at it through.
But that terminology is also really important. Like, there's no more grad directors, we're now grad coordinators, because director, my understanding, is reserved for school directors, which is an admin position. So I'm no longer a grad director, I'm a grad coordinator.
Oh.
That's an unpaid, of course, position. I don't know how we would find out if chairs are getting extra.
I'm guessing directors are APs staged, so.
That's
that'd be
true.
very-
That's
Yeah. But name, supervisor director. Right, no, we're not paid for that, yes.
Do you rotate that position? I wish. You wish. Sounds to me, if you're not getting an increase in salary, then you have at least rotate it. Every so often.
I'm making those, yeah, of course, release, yes, and that's.
So we don't have a force release.
Shit. So you have no type of compensation?
Zero.
So. There's no incentive for other people to take it on.
Of course. No. It's zero. Zero compensation is zero effort.
Wow,
That's not fair.
it's not
Yeah,
fair.
that's not fair.
I know. So that's a very minimum, they should rotate that position for everybody. The very minimum.
Yeah.
And I gotcha.
If you take,
And for us, I think we have our open paper specifically defined that like the program director get one course release a year. I think that's it.
that's your operating paper?
Yes, it's
Well,
it's part of the
that's-
decision.
That's, new to that, I think it's in our, one that we're putting, and I think before that, there was never official.
We cannot.
I don't think in the old operating paper.
The old one, the new one is still have.
Yeah, but I don't even know, it's.
So I think this is something for those units that are still working on operating papers as mine is,
Yeah.
to think about adding into their drafts.
And it might, some units that are accredited, the accrediting body might require that the program directors or coordinators, whatever they're to be called, they have course release in order to do the work. So I know our accrediting body has that language right in the standards, so there's no question, like it has to be. But that's a tough spot, because
That
that's
is
not fair,
rough.
that impacts your research, particularly.
I think, coming to your point, it's not to, when the PhDs is involved, if they come with a finance, with a budget, then that person can have actually, some compensations. But lots of the PhDs that would forward this to the board of education, they would just forward it to get that PhD without really posting, what budgets.
I see.
We all know the position that somebody's gonna, one time or another, you're the only one who will actually do it. If you get it, you take it on and you do it not being paid because nobody else is gonna really do it, right? Who's gonna suffer if it's the grad students in your case, right? And somebody with conscience is not gonna let that happen. So how do we go about? How does she go about? How does she file a grievance? How do we go about getting her a divorce release at least?
Getting it in your new operating papers.
Yeah. If it's not in your operating papers, it's gonna be a hard fight. So really starting,
From that, so
she could, yes, and
that's how you can do it.
any person in a service position can resign at any point.
I think whatever,
It's to.
it's kind of like strike.
Administrative use.
Yeah, it would be. You're
It
right.
doesn't get done. Administration can have answer about that.
Well, there is that side of it too. You just let somebody else do it, screw it up, somebody, I know, I get it.
Right, so I'm gonna bring in this conversation. We have identified a problem and I think the budget committee, if you have the ability to at least look into the concept of compensation is there for program coordinators. That's a really good starting point to sort of see what the temperature is across the university.
And by program coordinators, we don't mean graduate and undergraduate
No,
directors.
no,
We mean
just the,
if there's still a title of program coordinator.
I think that's a really good place to start because every program should have something like a coordinator. And then, no.
No, no.
Well, maybe that's the first place, maybe that's
Yeah.
a place to start.
I don't know how many there are. That would be a searching the website.
Yeah.
Research.
And reaching out to deans, because they should
Yeah,
have lists.
that would be
of
good.
sections. Any other questions for the budget committee? All right, moving on to committee on committees.
Well, this one's easy. We are working on the volunteers that we've gotten for the recent call that we made. We have, I was hoping that we would be able to, vote on sending them forward, but we haven't completed that process, so I don't know. I think it has to go through EC before we present it to the Senate, so it will be the next meeting. So, but we do have the right amount of volunteers and
Fantastic.
we're moving forward and we look forward to the elections so that we can add a few more people.
Oh, yeah, that was helpful too.
So, yeah,
That's
that's where we
awesome.
are. Thank you. Thank you. And see.
Thank you very much. And it's nice to have untangled the mess a little bit. Awesome. Moving on to status and welfare. Dr. Lee?
Yeah. We have three business matters to report. First of all, the EOC, the Emergency Operating Committee, met yesterday only for 20 minutes. So if faculty members have any concern about the COVID-19 vaccine or insurance issues, just let me know. So far, I think for vaccine, the most recent one, pretty much available through the Department of Education of Jackson County. And students, obviously, if they have a concern on vaccines issue, so far, if you have, just let me know, I can pass it to the EOC. So yesterday we had a brief meeting for 20 minutes. So we're going to meet again within 2 weeks. So, and second, again, okay, I will also defer the co-chair of the Governance Committee as well as our co-chair Jennifer Walker And we met last week, four of us met last week. We talked about possible amendment of the faculty Senate opening table, as well as getting involved in the different units opening table. But we're going to have meetings with each committee separately. That means governance committee going to meet with their members and faculty status welfare committee. In fact, this afternoon, we're going to meet to discuss whether we're going to support the amendment of our current faculty senate open table, as well as the involvement of different units open the table. So we're going to have a discussion. So that's two business matters. Jennifer, you may have anything?
I was just gonna make sure you didn't hear me.
I have a question for you in regards to the EOC. Is the university keeping track at all of COVID across the population, or are they? Since
We
we're
track
not-
up the COVID-19?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. No report, no tracking anymore. We just follow the CDC guideline. That's all.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was something they were going to do again.
Any question for me or Jennifer?
All right, thank you for your report.
Sure.
Next is governance committee.
Yes. Before that, I start the report, actually. I was at the retention retreat and I did not see you there with me. Is there any reason why the faculty senate is not invited to attend such a meeting?
No,
It's part of shared governance, right?
so I couldn't personally attend because of my teaching
But
responsibilities.
were you invited at least?
I don't know if I got a personal invitation, but we were all invited by the chancellor at our last meeting.
Okay. I mean,
So I assumed that was an open invitation for anyone, not only on Senate, but any.
yeah, I think the president of the faculty senate should be invited by the administration to all those meetings because that's something that shows, number one, that we are involved in everything that's happening. Number two, we could be reporting to everybody. Or if you can't attend, someone else can.
Yes, absolutely. Would you guys like me to, in my reports, tell you invitations I have received from admin for different, yeah, I can do that. But no, I did not receive a personal invitation from anybody.
So we met with the faculty senate welfare to discuss actually the amendment of our operating paper for the faculty senate. The one thing that was actually discussed is how can we put language there that mention, compensations. We know, for example, the president and, certain committees are busy most of the time, with many hours spent on, the work that we've been doing. And there should be some type of compensation that should be mentioned there. And whether it makes sense to leave it as percentage of work, then the faculty can negotiate that with the dean as, service, or it could be course release or any other thing. We did not finalize the discussion, so we decided that we will meet another time and come up with some guidelines. So that's one. The second thing that we've discussed actually is the operating paper. Many schools are going through their OPs, and the discussion was whether we should have at least some kind of standard among our paperwork for all the schools. So like every school should have at least, we should mention or should talk in their operating paper about certain things that are very important to the faculty. So we will need another time to discuss what could be implemented there or what could be suggested, and then we'll do it.
Would that information come from what the faculty view as important for operating papers, or would that come from sort of a collaboration with like the provost's office for what they see as required for an operating paper?
Well, I think it's very important for the faculty first to know what's important to them.
Yes.
And, I'll give you an example, for example. Your vote, when you vote on something in your own school, who should be voting? Tenure
Yes,
track
membership.
versus non-tenure track. So issues that relate to, curriculum, stuff like this, versus other issues that relate to your promotion and tenure. So a lot of this language should be there, and everybody at least will know, what are the differences, because sometimes you have a vote and you're surprised with the results of that vote, and when you ask, then you see, how the vote was made or something like that. So stuff like this should be in the operating.
So then my next question is, do you then expect the Senate to make sure these requirements are met? Or do you expect again?
We expect at least the Senate to forward, the recommendation to the Provost Office and to the upper administration. Whenever the OP reaches there, so to make sure. The other thing that could happen, I'm not sure if we can really forward this directly to the schools, to the committees that are working on operating papers, and how can we forward it there?
That's a really good question. And actually, I've been thinking about this a lot because I've been working on my operating paper, so please forgive all the questions. Is there a official list of operating paper committees? Yes.
It's Article 5 of the TTCBA that governs the creation of operating papers and the items that are included within an operating paper, including definitions of voting faculty, roles of curriculum, and all of that is already included. This is what the provost uses to make their determination.
What's the name of that document?
The SIU FA collective bargaining agreement.
That's available on.
It's available online. It's Article 5 of that document that covers the creation and the items that are required by NOP.
All right, thank you.
In fact, one of the things that usually you do is you share your OP with the faculty association, and you also share it with the upper station. And then you get the feedback of the two before that you can move it forward.
Some with the medical schools, so I'm not familiar with how that's. I'm learning, thank you.
Anything?
I have a question for Jeff then for committee. So it's good that Jeff, you're here because you can help us understand the CBA collective bargaining agreement, especially Article 5. When provost office sends the units open paper to you, that means faculty association. So how do you process it?
We don't. The provost office has sent us operating papers as a courtesy, but we have the contractual process is that the operating papers are created and voted on by the faculty of their unit, then approved by their dean, then approved by the chancellor. So there's no position for us anywhere in that process. We're only the FA would only be involved if there's a dispute between the faculty of the unit and the administration. Then other contractual triggers, but we do not review it.
Listen to you just supporting it and okay. You approve it?
We do not have an approval process. It is the faculty of the unit that writes and approves their operating paper. There's no other body of faculty that get in and tell the faculty how their unit should run. That is then sent to their dean. Their dean then approves it or sends it back. And then that is sent to the chancellor, who normally designates the provost office to actually approve it. But those are the only parts of the process that are in the document.
But I assume that it.
Could you hold on a second? For another question for Jeff and the committee. Did you guys remember those as a committee, Patrick, my boss, and you and I had a meeting with Mark Morris? The process we agreed 2 years ago. Basically, the provost office and the open paper to you faculty association, and then faculty association send it back to provost office, and then provost office send to the faculty senate, and faculty senate will collaborate with the provost office, give feedback in a rapid way as a part of the guidance. That's what we agreed. At least understanding. Did you guys know? That's in the summer where the
Yes,
meetings.
that was my understanding. That's why I said that the faculty will send the OPG with the faculty center.
I would encourage you to reach out to the current provost about their view of how this process will work. There was no, I mean, certainly a conversation that one had with Mark Morris, maybe, but that was not formalized, does not bear a lot of, it has no official authority. So, but certainly my view has always been that the FA is not, it is not there to tell faculty how their internal units should run. I'd like to answer Amber's question.
Back to my question, yes, this would have been just quick. I wanted to, but the fact the FA is there for consulting, if the faculty wanted to ask for.
So there's in fact a mediation process that can occur if the faculty within the unit are unable to come to agreement. That is mandated, that's co-run by the Faculty Association and the Provost Office. And there is other, yeah, we're absolutely there to help people work through their process. And if they have disputes with administration, which happens, then we advocate for the faculty.
Thank you.
Really quickly, I want to mention, so I had a meeting with the new provost this summer before the semester started. And one thing I mentioned was FS involvement in operating papers. And that we didn't come to any sort of formal agreement or anything, but I really encourage you guys to talk to the chancellor because she seemed to provost, sorry, because she seemed to feel that FS should not be a body through which operating papers are approved. Right, so that should be between the faculty and their unit administration and the chancellor. So, and I'm not saying that was a conversation we had. So I encourage you guys to reach out to her to come up with some formal process if the FA or the FS is going to be.
I think probably we should go over our own operating paper, which is the faculty senate operating paper, and know exactly what we can do and what are, our limitations first.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question as well, because looking at the operating paper, there's very little specific language. And so the operating paper says that the Senate will deal in all matters that are matters to faculty.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of room for interpretation, and it couldn't be interpreted either way. Either the FS gets involved in this process or the FS does not.
So probably it's about time to revise that operating paper and put some amendments that can say, hey, we are involved or we are not involved.
Sounds great. I think that's a great idea.
Ordinarily, I keep my mouth shut. I think we need to our own faculty that operate carefully. It is clearly stated it's faculty senate to take care of any education policies that may impact faculty members. If we do not get involved in this, even at the advisory board, we fail to our job.
I think this is a wonderful thing for the governance, and we should be.
We call for a chair of every committee to join us for a meeting and we can go over the OPs and start, looking at where we have holes to fill and put them as amendments for votes, hopefully still this semester.
Personally, I think that's a wonderful idea.
As Khalid said last week, 4 of us had a meeting, we voted that we definitely get involved in this process of new open paper. That's why we're going to meet with each committee members, make sure they will understand, they will endorse this. And that's part of our job and function and responsibility at faculty senate. Otherwise, what's the function of faculty senate? I cannot speak faculty association. I paid the due almost $800. Okay, I'll stop here.
So yeah, whatever the Senate decides is what the Senate will be.
Sure.
This is a faculty-driven body, just like faculty-driven policy, right? So if that is the way that the chairs and the Senate vote, then that's absolutely what we'll do.
Thank you.
Right. Any other
I
questions?
just want to mention
Yes.
actually that the faculty association was involved in reviewing the operating paper For the schools,
Defined before.
2 years ago.
During the reorganization,
Yeah, yes.
Faculty Association has the right to review Article 9 documents, not the right to review OPs. So there's a difference there. So the Article 9 documents, the documents that JET created the schools, those administration were required to provide to the Faculty Association. Faculty Association had the right to comment on. According to the contract, OP does not follow that same process. So that they're separate but related processes.
Because I was a chair of our operating committee, and I was asked actually when they're done to forward them to the faculty association at the same time to the vice chancellor for administration.
There's been some confusion, particularly post reorganization, because of those Article 9 documents that required the Faculty Association to provide comment. OPs do not have that same status.
Clearly, there is a lot of confusion in this process. And it's not a good thing. For us. Perhaps we can ask the provost office for clarification language to be sent out to all units as we go through. Any other questions or comments?
Too much.
No, not at all, not at all, thank you.
Thanks God, Cherry, the
I like that we are working for change. All right, so we'll move on to our committee on institutional ranking and educational policy.
Okay, again, we have a few business items to report to you. First of all, we have included 2 attachments, which shared with you, and all the faculty senate member will see them. So we met on September 15th, a copy of the meeting note summary shared with you, pretty much open, transparent. And second, each subcommittee or each group, in fact, group members, they are meeting, pretty much their own group meeting, especially group 1, focus on student success, which count almost 50%, 47 to 50%. And you saw the mental scale, and as you know that based on the faculty senate open table, and any committee can form their subcommittee based on the needs and the goal. If you check in that. And we include each group, we include the faculty members, students, and the administrative staff members. Now, that's the second item. And third, just FYI, and we were ranked last year 263 in the past 2 or 3 years. So now this year is 280. I don't know whether it's good or bad, but there are a few changes there. First of all, there are several indicators, criteria was not used in the past years. Now they include, for example, faculty impact, research, citation. They never used it in the past years. Now in 2024, they included. That's why our group 3, that means Yinan and Chairman Bay, or facilitate this group 3, focus on faculty quality, faculty compensation. That's important. We really, I think, we need to care to support our faculty members. Faculty members bring the ranks. So compensation, very important, research, unification, citation, but also consistent with our research 1 ranking status. So that's something new for you. Just FYI, I'm going to ask Chancellor Nan's question. And this time, by the way, we're doing back because in the past for national university, around I think less than 1,000. Now they include almost 1,500 national universities. Even SIUE used to be regional. Now that's a national university. They rank to 333. So in ways, okay, they do not have PhD, but they have doctorate degrees. So just FYI the change. But I see this as an opportunity because we have not we do not have any action to improve it except focus on enrollment. Of course, important, but we need actions. So we're going to meet on October 20th and it's on minutes. So all the three group subcommittee members are going to meet with them. And maybe you can have anything on this.
Yes, so I think we shared last time around that we've integrated an administrator or some administrators on each of the subcommittees as well as undergraduate and graduate students. And we're trying to align the recommendations we make. So each group is asked to come up with about 10 recommendations and ideas for the as to how we can align with the strategic plan. That's the Imagine 2030 strategic plan. And then our provost is working on an academics strategic plan. So once that's in place, we're going to continue to try to feed in with some of the recommendations from our subcommittees. So, our goal is to continue to kind of work with pushing those issues from faculty senate side so that at least it's not just top down, but there's really a shared approach to building these documents and building a plan moving forward to help improve our status on all these counts, student success and faculty and institutional governance. So I think it's great that we kind of made the traction we have. We have David Shirley's involved, so he's the head of institutional effectiveness. We saw a lot of parallels between what he did at the recruitment and retention retreat last week and then the kind of information he's been feeding to us. So I think it's good that, he's a new player on the block or a new kid on the block because he's just trying to find himself and figure out ways that he can, infuse what his passion is around data. So I'm excited about that, optimistic.
Can I add one more thing? We want to make it clear that we are not dictated by US News World Report indicators. We use it as an approach to improve our own success, to tell our stories. And that's why I want to make it clear. Because the US News World Report itself is very controversial. And some of the university do not want to join. So that's why we use this indicator as a way to improve our success.
So Dr. Lee, sometimes it takes just somebody to submit this information. So maybe your first starting point is to check if we have a person within SIU who is responsible for collecting all the information, sending it, for the bank.
Yeah, we do.
Usually they send to us in the past 2 years.
When you say to us,
Send to, at least send to the faculty senator, which I shared with Idaho committee. But this firm, they have not received anything. I do not know whether you have received anything. So last year I received it, this year I didn't receive it. And for 2025, they should send, hopefully they will send to Bethany. Bethany, if you receive it, show with Idaho committee, will double check. And I know last year my department sent to me, I share with them, give them feedback. But they change. Remember, the US News World Report is a company. They change, even you send the information, whatever, they use some indicators, which beyond our control. That's why now we have to.
Indicator that we cannot control. I mean, every indicator we're going to use, we can control it because we are a university like any other university in the US. We do have access to citation index for every faculty here in SIU.
Well, let me correct on myself, maybe the words of control, if you need to too strong. I'm saying that, okay, they sent us information last year, 2022, and we send the feedback to the Chancellor's office. Then after that, we do not know what's going on.
Then probably we need to ask if the information was forwarded. Because if they did not receive information about citation index or about, funded research or about faculty, versus student or things like this, that's what will bring your ranking, higher and not lower.
The information they send out pretty much the chart. And we just check whether they need feedback or not. We let them know. We know 2022, I wrote a detailed response and sent to them, and also I shared with, I think with Joe Schramm. And then
We should make it.
the final submission, okay, the process that they seek feedback from the committee and I send to them. And then the Johnson office work with institutional resource, other offices to finalize it. They submit it, then we not know.
Maybe we should make it mandatory if we're involved in any process. Then we should
Okay,
get the feedback by the end of that process.
Yeah,
If you are asked, for example, to review.
we can raise the question to the
Something,
council.
if that thing is being, sent somewhere or finalized, then you should have a final copy.
I agree.
I think what may have happened this year is that we had a changeover in the Office of Institutional Effectiveness. So in 2024 or 2022 rather, we received a draft, but Will Clark was the interim director at that time. And, we had been working on this for a while, so we had that interface with them. And David Shirley began his position July 1. Those documents were submitted, but, he might not have made the connection and nobody may have told him that he needed to share that with us. So that's something that we need to work on. The same person within the IR unit is the one who pulled the information together and, and submitted it. So we know who that is, but the problem might have been just, they're not going to send it directly to us. It's going to go through the chain of command, right? So I think maybe we just need to have that conversation so that we keep those
Sure.
lines of communication open.
And whenever you're involved in the process, before, you should ask to get that back when the process is ending. So
Yeah.
Sure, I think that we have a new director of institutional research and effectiveness of Ms. David Shun. He is involved in our adult committee, three subgroups. And in fact, he provides us the data, which is a good communication channel. In the past, only Will Clark going to see the CIO, Chief Information Office, you watch two offices. So obviously you made a good point to make sure faculty, Senate, adult committee were very involved. And more importantly, I think we have criteria and how shall we improve? That's more important.
When they join us, I'm gonna ask the question to the provost and the chancellor that I think I have implications for institutional ranking. So I'm just gonna mention them really quickly here, because I don't want to repeat myself. But I found out that undergrads are no longer required to go to their advisors and get run numbers for registration. Correct. Oh, that seems extremely problematic to me and connected to institutional ranking and graduation rates and how long students are here and how well they're doing in their programs and their satisfaction, all kinds of things. And advisors were not consulted on it. Administrative decisions.
But we did bring this up last spring.
Okay.
I believe I brought it up with the chancellor, during an FS meeting. Or an executive committee meeting, but yes, you're correct,
I'm gonna bring it up again.
And very quick, like President wants what you talking about the ranking. I think that everything should go to APs because they should they collecting because they are like that's what they were supposed to do because they go through all the program review and they all the data. That's what they should have been working on.
That's really interesting because a lot of the duties in the AP office shifted from AP to institutional effectiveness. Just over this, since we transitioned from Lizette leaving and restaffing that office, and then with the IR change as well. So that's something.
Okay, I see. They were changing to that.
But it's something worth looking at because you're absolutely right. If one office is just oversaturated with activities, that's going to dilute how effective they can be.
But especially the data collection, I would think the APA is supposed to be, you know, the office is supposed to do that. And I do have a question about the document you provided. It says like the group 3, I think is it like a for around the 27%? What does that mean?
So the ranking itself is comprised of different components.
Okay.
And so about 27% of that entire ranking,
Basically,
It's
it's faculty
faculty.
compensation, quality.
Right.
Okay.
But-
Thank you.
but I'm wondering if that's gonna change in the future because of now the.
Yeah, we have to base on what we have.
Right.
We're trying- Okay. Thank you. Yes, that's all.
Do you have another?
I just wanted to ask, right, comment, that maybe if you have some good idea for us, involve different indicators, for example, graduation rate, retention rate, and the persistent population rate, and then student debt, and also different ideas of help us, we can include them into our action plan. And I took notes and make sure you undergraduate students should see their divider before we switch.
Yeah, the second one, very briefly, was is the impact of the sweeping of the DE money. Because it is affecting PhD units' ability to travel, research, and fund graduate students for travel and research. Which in PhD programs are for rankings, so for me, there's a connection there. But it's again a question, right, with Chancellor. I just see that both of them have implications for how we do our jobs here. Implications for them, which I think might be.
Any question for us?
Great. Thank you guys. Thank you for all the suggestions. We're gonna move on to old business. Is there any old business? Yes.
I think the old one, like we were talking about the how, where should we forward it to the, like the course release for the president of faculty senate. And I think we should move put the document into the APA, because that's the place. Get the approval, right? The next level of approval, at least to the administrators to get that approved, reconcile. Can we do that?
Course
The course release, because the course
The
release is
official
to
definition.
APA, and then basically we need to have a discussion, that would be the step for us. to do.
So you're talking about the faculties.
Correct. In addition to in the future, we may incorporate that into the operating paper, but for now, this is what.
Sure.
I think for now, what we need to do is put an amendment to the operating paper. Make the suggestion, for compensation, either as course release or, percentage of service. For
No, for the
example.
graduate, we already proved,
Yes.
for that, that's what we were talking about, the
Resolution, if the resolution was approved, then it's made up the implementation.
Yeah.
And then for our open table, whether we should implement there or not.
that's a different.
That's a trick.
I'm going to abstain from action.
Sure.
So whatever you feel is best. Sounds good. All right, any other old business? Any new business? I have two things. One is, as you know from the last meeting, I've been invited to go with the provost on the academic strategic planning tour across colleges. Of course, it has to happen in a time, so the meeting dates and times are slowly being set, so they're not all set yet. But a couple of them are at a time where I will be out of town at a research collaboration meeting. And I wanted to let you guys know as a body that when that happens, I will be sending out an email to you asking for a proxy. Once I receive a proxy, I will then send you the approval information from the provost. So I wanted to give you guys a heads up so that it doesn't come out. Okay. Okay, and then my second new business is the concept of the YouTube the live YouTube videos because the reason that the live YouTube videos were put in place was during COVID, when that was the only way to fulfill the Public Meetings Act, because all of our meetings have to be public. But as far as I'm aware, there's no requirement that we have a live YouTube channel. The meeting dates and times and locations are posted, as well as the minutes. So I believe that we meet the criteria of the Open Meetings Act without having to have a live YouTube film. So I wanted to bring this up and ask for the opinion of this body on whether or not this is something we want to keep going or whether or not it's something we need to into getting rid of if we already fulfill the Open Meeting Act with our other measures.
I would vote for getting rid of the live YouTube stream.
Ditto.
Can I, does anyone watch the videos? Besides Josh, watch the videos.
So we'll probably still do a recording. We will still probably do a recording that we can make available in public. Of course, Josh uses things for minutes, so we will still have a recording, but needing to have the broadcast on YouTube. So.
I was just curious if we, there were 300 people that just like, that was what they did to take themselves.
We get a handful of views, so it just just
During the
Well, we
live
got-
stream,
Hacked a few times too.
we did really horribly, very horribly. Oh, yes. Yeah.
I know in the past few years, some faculty members, sometimes the contact us, they want to know what's going on in the faculty senate meeting. Not for the EC, for the faculty senate. And sometimes we will go there to watch the video. Josh, you described, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I'm saying that in the past 2 years, some faculty member contact us. They want to know what's going on in the faculty senate meeting. So we will go there to watch the video, especially involved with the report from chancellor and provost.
Yes, we can still record and have those recordings available.
Sure.
For yeah, whether or not, so currently there's one person on the live stream and it is Josh. And it might be something that we don't want to do for this body, but we do want to do for the faculty. Maybe, I don't know if this is.
Are these meetings open
Yes,
to the public? I
Yes.
didn't realize these.
They can come in, right?
yes, both FSCC
I mean,
and
I know our regular.
I was,
These were.
I will check though. I was, until you said that, I was
I
99% sure.
I don't think they are.
I started to say, when we set that up, we didn't interpret it that this EC was, we just,
Yeah.
we knew that the faculty senate was, but the executive committee, we didn't treat it as such.
I would prefer both to not be live streamed on YouTube, because
Well, and I think we need criteria.
we have to feel
As long as they're
comfortable.
advertised.
Yeah.
It's just a pandemic.
So I can look into making sure we meet the requirements in other ways. And then I will present a resolution hopefully next month to this body, the Senate.
Let's see.
Right, so just really,
Okay, so
I think they double booked this room. Or something, yeah, originally, and so we're sort of having to tell people that. So, sorry if there are any interruptions.
sorry. This room is double booked.
Double book, yeah. Are there any other, those are my only items of new business?
I have a question. So our meetings here, so maybe if you get more and more faculty, involved and bringing, issues directly to the faculty senator. Would it be a good idea to send them to all the faculty, with the link for the YouTube recordings, for example?
So put that, so make the links available, we put that up.
Once
on
we
the-
approve the
then it-
minutes, for example, then at the end of the session, so or next day, so it will go to all faculty, then we know what we discuss. Maybe it will wake them up, to reach out.
That's why we were representatives. Like, that's our job to
But you cannot, you know,
Well, it's
most
open.
colleges don't have their regular meetings. I mean, in the past, the colleges, they used to meet once a month and then you come there and you present what you learned. So there was no meetings.
We just
actually.
send an email.
Yeah, well, so we do have a repository on the website for minutes. We can add videos to that as well.
The minutes are open. At one point, we did, now this is during the pandemic, we put a link to all the faculty senate meetings on the faculty senate website, and anybody could come if they wanted to because of the Open Meetings Act. So that link, I'm assuming, to the actual meeting itself, is it still available?
All of the information is available, right?
Well, since we got like the Zoom bombed, we kind of hid the links. So like whenever I post the agendas on the webpage, like I take down the links
Okay.
because that's
Yeah, I know, we
the
got
thing
some
that
free there.
we wanted to keep that. So
Right.
I mean, we can,
I mean, that's why, one of the reasons we went to YouTube, so that people could view the meeting without hijacking the meeting through Zoom.
Last bit, because the chancellor's here, I would say that for new business to bring back up the issue of runs. Yeah, how the conversations go.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think. Yeah, we should. Yeah. All right. Any other new business? Yes, all right, Chancellor Lane, are you with us?
I am. Here it is. I am. How you doing?
Good, good. Do you know if the provost will be joining us as well?
Yeah, I think she is because she's the one that told me it wasn't 1 o'clock. It's 2 o'clock, so she
Great.
should be on, and I will send I'll send her a little text while I'm going through this, just so she knows. How's everybody doing?
Decent.
Good. Well, I know it's October, so I always like to ask that question because it's hard to believe it's October. But just want to check in and make sure everybody's still breathing.
So far.
So far, so good, huh? Good.
Would
Good.
you like,
Well,
yeah, go ahead. Would you like to give your report?
Yeah, I thought I'd let me share my screen, and if you've been in one of these before, I apologize, but I want to talk about two things today and update you. Obviously, one is a recap for enrollment, and I'll share with you in just a second about that. And the other, I'd like to talk about our retention retreat that we just had last week, which was well attended and had a lot of good discussion about where we want to go in that regard. So let me attempt to share with you this screen, and let me know if you can see it. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Good. Just wanted to recap on some of the enrollment piece. We had a great celebration last week with the campus community and thanking them for helping us reach some pretty big milestones in enrollment. You know, when we talked a couple of years ago, we were all pretty much concerned about the direction in which the enrollment was going. And we all committed, not just me, it was a lot of people, a team effort of folks who committed to trying to move the needle on enrollment in a number of different areas. And as you can see, I always like to bring out the stats here because sometimes they get missed in an article or maybe in conversation. So I wanted to make sure we're sharing exactly what we look like. And again, if you've seen this before, I apologize, but I think it's important to think about it. You know, our overall enrollment increased. If you look at the number of students in the amount of years, that was a pretty high percentage. We went up 2.3%. This is a number that's going to haunt all of us. And I don't know what we do about it. We talked about it in cabinet. Could you guess how many students that still registered after the 10th class day? Anybody want to take a guess? You remember I said I was going to track this.
Couple hundred?
Well, about 106 to be exact. That's a good guess there, Dr. Rader. So just think about that for a moment. Our enrollment would have been up 11,459, we would have been the largest, we already were the largest increase in the state, would have been even larger. So we're looking for ways to make sure that, one, if students are starting after the 10th class day, they're probably at risk academically, right? If they've not been sitting in those classrooms since the first day. So we don't want to do our students a disservice. But, you know, in this case, even though we're still counting that as revenue, that student is starting late, we're not getting to count them in our overall count 10 class day. So there's some work there that we're going to be focused on to try to make that a little bit better. You know, you think about first time in college students, we've had about 4 straight years of that number increasing. We thought 3 years ago that we needed to really focus on having a base of freshmen coming in the door. And that number, as you can see, has gone up 6.8%. That's a pretty positive number there in terms of our freshman class. Transfer students, we strategically worked on that a couple of years ago with Saluki Step Ahead and some of the partnership agreements that we have across the state and then outside the state. Our agreements now are about 44 of the 48 community colleges. And we have agreements with Lone Star College. We're signing an agreement actually next week at Dallas College. That used to be Dallas Community College District. They've got about 70 some odd thousand students, heavy transfer student population. So excited about grabbing Texas with 2 of the largest community college systems there to be a part of Saluki Step Ahead. We do have Kansas City. It's Metropolitan is up in Kansas City. We've got St. Louis Community College as well. So we are targeting Nashville with our Nashville takeover. We'll be in Nashville this year, trying to strengthen that relationship to get more students out of the Nashville area. A lot going on in Nashville. We've got some competition there with Middle Tennessee State and a few others. Not so much Vanderbilt and some other places, but in terms of cost, we could be a really good option for a place like Nashville, which is growing like crazy, by the way. So a lot of work will be done there. That Step Ahead, as you can see, that's a 121% increase. And we're just getting started there. So we really believe that number will go up even more. New graduate and professional student enrollment increased 11.8%. That piece we focused on as well in terms of needing to get that number up. From the region, this is what we were accused of a couple of years ago, that we didn't recruit locally, our students were leaving us, going other places. We've slowed down a lot of that and really changing that, making sure that students here feel like we are recruiting them. One thing you will read about in the press release that we're going to send out here is every student that has that 2.75, which is what it requires to get in. We've worked with the superintendents. We met with them the other day. We're actually going to be sending those students direct letters of essentially admission if they meet that criteria of 2.75. So we are going to be working in very closely with them. Fully online students increased 9.2%. We expect that number to go up even higher. That's a market, non-traditional students or degree completers, folks that we really want to make sure we attract. Those are folks that may never come to Carbondale, but they will have an opportunity to get a degree from SIU Carbondale. So we're excited about that. We still are able to, I don't see it on here, but I think our data is about 9% of our incoming first cohort group that's coming in. Those students are still coming in at 3.5. So we're still attracting students. It's 9.8% increase there. They're 9.8% of new students with a high school GPA of 3.5. So we're still attracting a high quality student that's coming in and doing well. All of our populations from minority student populations or from the diversity standpoint has increased. Students from 2 or more races, international students, Hispanic students, African-American students, each of those populations have increased. And in the midst of all that, we still have students that are staying on campus. So that's a very important piece. We want to attract those students to live on campus. Switching gears to the fall of 2024. All that's great. That information was exciting, but we're only as good as our last 10th class day. And because we hit those numbers, as you know, in our collective bargaining agreements, There are going to be some thresholds or some increases that come in the form of inside of faculty salaries that I'm excited about. So those, we already did, I think, the 1%, Dr. Tucker. I think the other piece is coming along in terms of the payouts for those. So I'm excited to at least be able to talk about how we'll see some increases there. For us next year, we will unveil it at the recruitment retention retreat that we're having at the end of this month. So it will work just like the retention retreat we just had. It will be a recruitment retreat. We will unveil what we think we want to hit in terms of a target next year. We've already been talking about it. Cabinet, we've got some percentages, not only for the fall of 2024, but all the way through to 2030 to get us to 15,000 students by 2030. That's the goal. And so we'll be able to show the group that's in attendance on that day sort of the plan for getting there and the percentages of increases we need to hit. You will hear more in the next couple of weeks about the enrollment cliff. Most universities in the state were not up. If they were up only in freshmen, kind of like us last year. This time around, we were up in a number of areas, particularly overall. So, there is some data that's out there that we're following that is showing that it could get a little tight here in about another 2 years. So we've got to be really creative as we partner with community colleges to make sure those students actually move on to another institution after they leave their schools. As we look to non-traditional students, fully online programs, we're trying to stay a few steps ahead of it, but it probably is coming, given the population projections in the state, the outward migration that's still occurring for high school students in Illinois. So we do have to be mindful of that. Moving on to the retention retreat, what we wanted to do is show the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think most of you in the room were able to attend. I hope that was good information. I see Dr. Lee and some others in there. But if you were able to attend, we're going to send out information that basically lets everyone who didn't show up to that meeting see the data that was presented. I think it's important that everybody across campus engages with this retention data. Because inside of that data are a lot of answers. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit, things that we could do probably differently to get a better percentage of persistence or progression or graduation. And so that was the focus of that retreat, is to show the data we currently have, break it out by groups. So we're not just talking about one overall number. We wanted to dig into African-American students, Hispanic students, Caucasian students, you name it. We wanted to look at the data. And we're also looked at it by academic school in college. So we looked at the retention rates, the graduation rates, and progression rates of each dean in their college or school. We'll continue to do that. November 1st, there's really an assignment due from that group that tells us really what percentage they want to achieve. And then most importantly, how are they going to get closer to that percentage. So it's great to recruit all the students that we brought in, but we do have to retain them. We do have to make sure they get from orientation to graduation. So there'll be a lot of focus over the next few years to move us in that particular category. So we've had to wait for a couple of years because we didn't have a person like David Shirley. We've been without an institutional effectiveness research and planning director for quite some time. We do have him in place now. He's going to do a really good job in really not forcing us to look at the data, but really giving us the data and the tools that we need to be able to make those numbers look a little bit better. So on that note, those are just some of the big updates that I wanted to give. And Dr. Tucker, I don't know if you have some things you want to add there, and I'll stop there and answer any questions.
We'll move on to the provost, and then we'll do questions for both of you after your reports.
Great.
Okay. So thank you for those who could come to the retention retreat. It really sets the stage for developing that academic strategic plan, because that is going to be a significant focus on the student side. And I know that those meetings are now getting scheduled. They're scheduled a little far out just because of my schedule, Dr. Rader's schedule, and I think she may have some substitution there happening on some of those meetings, so I look forward to joining some of you as well. In my report, I actually have a couple of questions I'm hoping you can help me with. The question of the emeritus title has come up, and my colleagues have been willing to dig out a policy that came forward in 2017 but was never approved. So it did come as a resolution from Graduate Council, and I know Faculty Senate also was willing to bring that forward. Is that something you would like to take up again? Because I would like to see us have a policy in place, since faculty are interested in this, they're asking about this. But I wanted to see if you are willing to look at what was done in the past and maybe bring that back forward for the Chancellor and I to consider. Any interest?
Can you add a little bit more information?
So there was a policy written and brought forward. So the hard part was done. There were some questions about how that title would be bestowed upon people upon retirement. We really don't have a policy now. When I was asked, we started looking into it. It was never executed from when it was brought forward by the faculty a few years back. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
I think there might be some merit in revisiting it because, we lose a lot of institutional memory and institutional expertise when faculty retire. And particularly at this juncture, we've had a lot of tenured faculty retire. And if we're looking at trying to improve our faculty rankings from the areas of research and productivity, index impact factor rather, it may be helpful to have some of those emeriti faculty available to younger faculty who come into the pipeline to help them with those kinds of strategies. And so if we invest in trying to retain faculty with at least the distinction of emeriti faculty, that might enable some of that institutional memory and institutional impact to kind of stay within the system rather than losing it altogether. So that's just my opinion. But you think?
Well, about 4 or 5 years ago, we had a discussion about, Professor Emeritus. Basically, for SIU, which is kind of unusual, they automatically give the status of Professor Emeritus. And then at that time, I argued that for many universities, if a professor retired, if they still maintain research active programs or doing research, and then SIUC's name is attached on any publication, maybe we should consider that. So that was a discussion. And then for the recent years, we do not know what's going on.
So this sounds like something that we should take up again.
Yes, we need to,
All right.
especially faculty status, we need to discuss this.
Yes, that is something that we would very much like to take a look at with you.
Okay, I will send you, I'll start with you, Dr. Rader, the information from the past I've been provided. And there are a couple of questions that we can talk about that stalled that policy out from being completed. I don't think they're insurmountable by any stretch. I think a few sentences might clarify it and everybody would be on the same page and hopefully be happy with that. So that if faculty want to continue having that association with the university, we can do that. The last Senate meeting, was the professional development resolution passed? And if so, how should I expect that to come to me? On faculty professional development?
That we did, I believe we did pass that resolution. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes.
Will I
But
get a
yes,
formal request then on the resolution?
Yes, you will receive that from myself and Josh Frey.
Okay, wonderful. And then the last item I had, the chancellor is allowing me to share the news, the good news. We do have, as many of you are aware, with the CBAs, the raises, the timeline for that for faculty. So the monthly increases will occur in month 11, which is the pay date of 10/31. So that's the raise going forward. And then the July 1 effective date up through month 11 will be in month 12. So that pay date would be in November 30th. So that's the makeup piece going back to the July 1.
Right, that's exciting.
Yes.
Right. Do you have any other items?
That is it for now. Happy to answer questions.
Right, we will open up the floor for questions. I see several hands. I don't know who's first, so I'll start with, we'll start with Li Cheng.
Oh, okay. I just want to piggyback on the second point, Dr. Parker talked about the resolution. So also faculty senator had passed a resolution to have one course release for the president of faculty senator. I was wondering, should we also forward that resolution for your approval?
Any resolutions, I'm assuming there's a process where they come forward. I'm
Yeah.
not aware of any resolutions in the time that I have been here, which has been short, and many of you were not on contract during that time. So yes, any of those resolutions, please send those forward to myself and Dr. Lane.
Okay, thank
Especially
you.
that one, because I think Dr. Lee, at the end of your term, if I'm not mistaken, that was a big one. You and I even talked about that. I was in support of it. But because of the workload that's involved and everything else. So by all means, as Dr. Tucker said, if we can get that going, that'd be great. I actually thought we had that done already, but if not, we can definitely look at it.
Thank you. Okay.
You go, Rachel.
okay. I have two, but I can take turns if you guys want me to. One I think is probably is for both of you in terms of thinking about retention of students. I've only recently been made aware of the fact that undergrads are no longer required to get a run and meet with their advisor during registration. And that causes great concern to me, particularly in terms of retention, as well as graduation, time to graduation, which is one of the factors that affects our institutional ranking. So I'm kind of curious why we got rid of that requirement and if it can be reinstated. I've spoken to some advisors and they have concerns that it's gone as well and have the impact on students who don't know what classes to take and when to take them and all of that. I think being required advisors is important.
Yeah, we found actually the exact opposite in the data. So if you noticed an article last week out of SIUE, they just actually had this uproar over there with students who they lost because they were requiring a run number. And they did not have enough advisors, nor do we, to be able to actually see every student that is coming in the door. There's no way possible for our advisors to be able to handle that kind of load. As a result, at SIUE, they lost enrollment. And that's what the article is actually talking about. We are analyzing, to your point, Rachel, and we're watching it. We were able to have students register, but then we have three things that happen that provost would be smiling because we just talked about this morning. Three things that are supposed to occur for incoming students that have registered without the run number. That advisors have three meetings that they will, or three contacts that they will do once the student arrives. And it happens this way. The first contact happens inside of University 101, which is a mandatory course for all freshmen that come in. And our advisors know exactly what course that particular student is in, and that's their first introduction to that student out of 16 weeks. That's the first introduction with that student. The second meeting that they have, and they've already had this, and Provost, I think you've got the dates or schedules, but the second meeting that happens is they start to work with students on their degree works. And that's a tool that our students use that basically helps them show them the seamless pathway from their major from start to finish. And so there's some confirmation in that second meeting that they're aware of degree works and that they understand, right, what that is, and that not only are they going to use it, but if they have some problems or need some assistance, they can always get it from the advisors. The last step that they go into, and I think Dr. Tucker, that's coming up here in maybe another week or two. The plan there is for them to go back in again to this University 101 setting with their students and to talk about what they're getting ready to take for the spring semester. So they will get into even more discussion about degree planning and those kinds of things as it relates to what they're going to be taking. We will assess with David Shirley's office. So we'll be able to come back to you in the spring and tell you if this worked. Our concern now is that we have too many students that are not declaring a major because they've not had that time to walk through 3 times with advisors. So they go all year without a major. Even in our retention retreat, that's a red flag. So we're going to be tracking these students in this cohort to be able to come back to you and say, as a result of 1,600 students that we registered, right, that registered and had advising, here's what we look like from fall to spring retention of those students. Here's what they look like from fall to fall. So we'll be able to find out if this, I don't want to call it an experiment, but if this shift is working or if we need to enhance it or change it. So we'll find that out. We did see at the National Institute of Student Success, it is a best practice model that's coming from Georgia State and some of the data that's there in terms of how they advise their students once they come to campus in a more of an intentional and intrusive way inside of University 101. So there's going to be a lot of testing, if you will, to make sure that, this is a model we want to stay with. We do know from a registration standpoint, our registration and enrollment numbers were through the roof because we didn't have students waiting on run numbers, meaning they were waiting on appointments. So unlike our counterpart, our sister school, that's where their issue came in. So we do know that had a big impact positively on enrollment. So we'll continue to study it. Dr. Tucker, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but it's definitely something, Rachel, we've been looking at to make sure we've got some data to back it up to see if it was a good change or not. Dr. Tucker, I don't know if you had something to share.
Yeah, I would just add that by eliminating the run number, for the 80% of the students that are comfortable doing that, they were able to register, become enrolled with us. And then it allows our advisor, which we do have, some limited capacity there, to focus on the students that really do need the assistance. We're also asking those advisors this month to have a one-on-one with our undecided students. We want to make sure that they are getting the breadth of experiences they need to make a decision about their major. When our advisors reached out to that population of undeclared majors in August for the returning students, what we found, with the exception of one person, many of them were at the point of being able to declare a major and just hadn't done it. So again, we're using our advising capacity to address the places where we have need and taking care of those students as well.
It's the first time we've used our predictive analytics, and that's in the retreat. For those of you that attended, you probably saw that term come up 7 or 8 times. We know the students that are not doing well. We know who they are. And we also know the students that are doing just fine, right? And as Dr. Tucker mentioned, because of the limited resources, right? I think NACADA has it, the National Association Advising Association has it 250 advisors to 1 student. So if you look at the ratios, we don't have enough staff to be able to handle all the students that we're talking about. So all students, we'd have a big problem. So we're really trying to look at those students who are most at risk from the predictive analytics and put our attention on those students. When we do that in programs like the Seymour Bryson, Dr. Seymour Bryson Future Scholars Program, you look at the success rate of those students because of the support that's built around them throughout the semester, not just one meeting. What happens in one meeting is it's prescriptive advising. So even with a run number, that's just a prescription for, hey, go take your classes. It's not a true developmental advising that happens the course of 16 weeks. So we're trying to do more of a 16-week advising, actually, which is more than just a one-time, here's your run number, take your classes. They need touch points a lot more in 16 weeks than one meeting.
Thank you for that.
Well, actually, I'll go with Khalid because we cut you off last meeting.
Yes. So this is a question to both of you, actually. Talking about predictive analysis, which you brought, Chancellor Lane. We are talking about 15,000 students in the next 5 to 6 years. Have we done any analysis or simulations to see, what do we need to host 15,000 students? That's almost 35% increase compared to what we have. So meaning that we need to recruit more faculty, more staff. We have to deal with an infrastructure that actually is aging, does not exist anymore, in certain cases. So what's the total investment that's needed to be able to be on time for 2030?
That's a great question. So you're making Dr. Tucker smile. So I think you'll see a lot of that teased out in the academic plan. That's why she's forming it, because we're thinking about 2030. We're not thinking about next year. And the beauty of an increase in students, the way it works in the state of Illinois, a little different in Texas, but the way it works in Illinois is that you have to rely on two things in order to grow your faculty or your staff, and that's state appropriations and tuition revenue. And so the more we inch up to that 15,000 students, the more we'll take those revenues, right? And we'll push it right in two places. We'll push it back into hiring faculty. That's the number one priority. I've said that publicly. No offense to staff, but the faculty are helping to generate the contact hour or the reimbursement piece. So we've got to have, there's a demand out there. We've got to fill it with faculty, qualified faculty. So that's the good news is the tuition revenue allows Dr. Tucker to be able to not only, have Christmas and say, hey, here's your faculty. If deans come to her and say, hey, here's where we're growing and we need some help in doing that, and we've got the revenue to do it, that's where we'll put it. That's another reason why we wanted to get this $38 million sustainability 2017 to 2024 plan out of the way this year, right? Because if you let that linger on, it gets in the way of you being able to use those dollars to hire more faculty or to give raises or those kinds of things. So I think we've got a good idea about how to get there. As far as infrastructure, you're exactly correct. There's some deferred maintenance that we have focused in on now. This year, we'll unveil our campus master plan. That work will begin actually this late fall, early spring in terms of our infrastructure across the university. And we'll talk about what we want to look like in 2030, 2040, 2050. I mean, we're talking out several years about what the campus footprint should look like. What should we demolish? What should we add? And so we at least have an idea about what we're working towards for our infrastructure, because you're right, it's aging. That's the problem at most universities across the country, is that if you were a chancellor president back in the 50s or 60s, you were fortunate because you got all the new buildings and everything else. If you're a president chancellor today, you're stuck with everything that was built in 1960, and you gotta take care of it. So it's a bad thing for us, I guess, now, but it's something that's on our radar. You're exactly right. Just because we had 20,000 students years ago, the easy answer is we've had 20,000 students before. We've got the capacity, we've got the infrastructure, but that's not exactly correct if you start thinking about, what I just talked about with hiring more faculty in this case to get back to that number and taking care of some of the buildings. So lot of work, and I know Dr. Tucker in that academic plan, that's what she's getting at when she's talking about, what we're going to need in the future. And some of that too is after the academic reorg, right? We're still trying to shake through what areas look like after the aftermath of things that shifted around. And so I know she's doing a lot of that with deans.
Yeah, the power of predictive analytics is pretty amazing. And with David Shirley now being on the team, we can look at as we grow enrollment based on the projections that Wendell Williams' shop has collected from the deans and looked at the data. We can tell you what classes those students are going to take. We can predict what majors they're going to go into. So we have the ability to understand where we need to be hiring faculty in advance of those enrollment increases. We already have a little bit of that right now before he ever got on board. Computer science is an area that's just growing by leaps and bounds, and we're already resourcing that program with additional faculty because of it. And so we will be using those predictive analytics for the human capital that we're going to need to be successful. And then I work very closely with Susan Simmers, our CFO, to understand then what does that look like on the infrastructure side of the house. We're talking about how we make sure our classrooms are modern with our technology. How do we pay for that? And ensure that our instructors have the things that they need to deliver that instruction in a modern world, which is not today. We're looking towards the future. So I do think you're going to see a lot more of the predictive analytics be used to guide us so we can make educated decisions on how we make sure that we are prepared for the incoming students as we continue to increase that enrollment.
Good afternoon, Chancellor Manan and Rose Tucker. My question is pretty much general, which have much to do with what we're working on, institutional ranking, education quality. And about a few weeks ago, I saw a ranking to 80, and in the past few years to 63. What was your reaction? What was your thought when you saw our ranking? Now it's 280. And again, I know the answer. First, I was shocked. I want to know what do you think about the ranking, and especially I was asking myself the question. Wow, wait a minute. We're trying working hard. How come the ranking beyond our control? So, of course, then I had a discussion with Associate Vice Chancellor Wendell, as well as Mr. David Shirley, and also Professor Yunan Chopovsky, and I figured a reason why. And again, I first want to know what was your reaction when you saw the ranking?
Yeah, I was not as shocked, and which is why we had the retention retreat. If you look at the rubric of the rankings, there's a big percentage of that that's based on retention, right? It's based on a couple of things that we're just trying to tweak and get better at. So I'm not shocked. It's also comes down to the reporting and how we report. It's the same thing we talked about with our exploration to R1 status. There's some things that, and you talked to Dr. Setsoulis or Dr. Tucker, there's some things that we could do that would considerably change in how we report it, that can considerably change our ranking and not only our rise to R1 status. So, we've got, I think, the right people in place right now that understand that. We are at the beginning stages in terms of what we're doing at that 280 mark and what others at 180 are doing. In terms of where they are, even going as far as looking at schools. I completed a survey. All chancellors and presidents have to complete a survey, which we get things in the mail with all these different schools. And, I think because I'm from New Jersey, Rutgers for some reason has found that out. So they send me all their stuff. And, we have to rate those institutions, and that's part of the rubric. We do a terrible job at that. So our new Jeff Harmon and others in addition to Costas Atsoulis, we're going to be sending all of the exciting things that are happening in our world of research and academics to other presidents and chancellors that will be ranking us. It's little things like that. So I think we understand the game. I think some here tried to fight that for a while and say, oh, people aren't looking at those rankings, no big deal. I disagree. You know, people are still looking at those rankings. And so we've got to find a way to, I don't want to say if you can't beat them, join them, but we do have to find a way to focus on those rubrics and make sure that we are reporting correctly and that we're having those tough conversations like on retention at our retreats, on terms of our faculty and who we're hiring, all those things factor into the rubric. So we still have some work to do as we try and move that number down.
Thank you, Chancellor. I think I fully agree with you. In fact, I see this as an opportunity for future improvement. And also we do not agree with US News World Report. We are not dictated by it, but we use it as a way to improve our student success and faculty excellence. And that's why our adult committee, in fact, our stage 1 examine the data. Now stage 2, we're working on, Elaine and I are working on with the subcommittee. Now we are thinking we're working on the action plan. So we hope you, administrative office, help us to implement that, which is more important. And at least we hope maybe in the next 3 to 5 years, we will see the results, because actually we haven't started action yet. We're still working on the action plan. So that's my explanation. And second, okay, Associate Vice Chancellor Williams, as well as Mr. Shirley told me. And also I checked on my methodology part. And this year, that means 2024, they include 1,500 institutions. In the past, less than 1,000. Even SIU Edwardsville used to be regional university. Now they put it into national university. Their ranking is 333 or 35. So and the third, they indicate the criteria, they also changed. 2023, they indicate didn't include faculty impact, such as citation, publication. 2024, they use some data elsewhere. We include faculty impact citation, which is important because we're moving towards research 1 status. So absolutely, we need to support faculty research. And I think these are very important. That's why I feel much better now than a few weeks ago. At least I know what's going on and we're working on it. Thank you.
Here is, let me share this with you, just so you, to back up everything you're saying. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
So this will give you exactly what I was talking about in terms of how the criteria are weighted in terms of what they're looking at. So just, it's pretty cut and dry, right? For national universities. So this is where, as Dr. Lee mentioned, we're at that 280, but graduation rates. So it's no secret, right, that we're having retention retreat, all day long to focus on that. First year retention rates. That's extremely important in terms of where they're giving us. But look at some of the weighted pieces. Graduation rate performance, Pell graduation rates. It just goes on and on. Big category that I mentioned earlier, right? Peer assessment. Look at that. That's 20%. Out of everything that, look at that, 20%. Faculty salaries, 6%. Student faculty ratio. So it just goes on and on and on, right? So this just gives you an idea. What was the highest percentage category in there? Peer assessment. So we've got to do a better job in how our peers are actually viewing us. We've got to do a great job on graduation rates, right? That's what's making the difference. So, just to have our folks, we've got David on board now. We've got some other initiatives. We've just got to look at where we can capitalize on in those areas. Other schools have done that, obviously, those that are 279 and below. So, we've got to look to some of those peers too and find out some other things that they've been able to do to get their rankings down.
I think that you're absolutely right.
I would like to move on to another question. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to ask questions, and then we'll come back.
Sure.
I just have a very quick question for Dr. Lane and Dr. Tucker. This is regarding recruitment. So I was actually working yesterday with a potential transfer student who was hoping to come in the spring. And in my conversation with our R&R in my college scholarship office, I learned that there are no scholarships available to any spring transfers. And that spring transfers, in fact, lose their eligibility for fall scholarships that they would be eligible for if they came forward in the fall. So that seems like that's a pretty strong negative. It's basically telling students that are wanting to come in the spring that they should go elsewhere. So I would like, I guess it's not a question, maybe just an encouragement to look into this.
Dr. Tucker, well, on face, I'm saying that's ridiculous.
I agree.
Where they got that from, whoever they got it from probably gave them wrong information. I'm hoping, Dr. Tucker, that's not the case because we have several students that receive some pretty hefty transfer scholarships, whether it's in Saluki Step Ahead or whether it's just in a transfer scholarship. So, and we also have some areas, Dr. Tucker, I think that, there's some dollars that are on the table that we haven't spent. So if you can get us maybe some info there, Jeff, that would help. And we can help that student, maybe even reach out to them directly and tell them what we do have available for them. That's why that transfer number went up, by the way, is because we've done a lot more in transfer scholarship. So yeah, if you can get that to Dr. Tucker or myself, we can investigate that a little bit more.
Email coming.
Thanks.
I just sent Mr. Williams a quick question. Is that he will know?
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely want them.
So first of all, I want to thank you both for being here and for, just the initiatives that you're taking to try to improve, retention and recruitment. But particularly around the retention side, as a faculty member, I'm increasingly becoming aware of the non-academic side of our institution and how many rich resources that we have available for students. And what I'm wondering is what kind of effort maybe we can make to try to bring that information to all faculty, through some kind of, I don't want to say marketing, but maybe some kind of like awareness campaign. Because honestly, like I had been a faculty member for about 15 years until I tripped upon some of the resources. And that was only because I was working on a special assignment to find out what kind of resources were available for first generation students. And as I talk to my peers, a lot of us are not aware of the richness of these resources. And it strikes me that if we're looking at trying to help plug students in, to help retain them and find persistence, maybe there's a strategy that we could be moving towards so that, like all of us from NTT to tenure track faculty are just, more aware and able to utilize those resources.
Dr. Tucker, you want to respond? And I got a comment.
Yeah.
It's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a issue every place I've been, and we are trying to come up with solutions because at new faculty orientation, it's really not the place because people are overwhelmed and they're just trying to get basic information to get into the learning management system, get their courses going. And so we need to have multiple touch points. I know several of you, how many received the maroon bag from the Student Health Services Center? One? Because there were 500 bags distributed to the colleges in the last few weeks. So hopefully they still have them distribute to you. Where there's a flyer, there's resource information that they put together for all faculty. So clearly even that didn't work because I see one hand went up. And so there are 499 bags sitting out there in the colleges waiting to be distributed. So I would like to get a small group together of faculty, or maybe it's Faculty Senate would put together an ad hoc committee what are the ways we can effectively communicate this information to faculty that makes it obtainable, that gives you updates regularly, but also does not add to your workload? You know, that you're not attending another, what can we do to help you know? I would love to do tours of some of the places that we have resources for students. I think for some faculty, that'd be a great way to ingrain that into what you're doing. If you've been and visited some of the resource centers that we have on campus. But I would love to partner with you to figure this out, because I've not been any place that has effectively figured this out. And you are frontline with our students. You're the most important resource for those students.
Yeah, I would agree to all that. And what we're finding, even in the data and with our visits to Georgia State and other places, the number one thing they keep saying is faculty are the number one key to retention. Not administrators, not these other programs. It's always the faculty. And to your point, Dr. Kowski, it's making sure that they understand or that they know about the resources, because they're with the students, right? They know what the student needs outside of the classroom. So it's really like Dr. Tucker's saying, we've got to gear up or gear back up and do a better job in making sure you know what is available, so that students can take advantage of it or you can refer to it. We don't do a great job at that. And I think some of it's because we're getting some new folks in. We are, obviously looking at areas that we can beef up. But that's the goal. So I think going forward, if we can find, like Dr. Tucker mentioned, just a centralized way of communicating that doesn't put it on your lap and force you to do more than what you need to be doing based on your loads. But there is a way we can help out with that. So I'm glad you brought that point up. Something we could do a better job of.
Quickly.
Yes, this was a very quick one. Chancellor, I was actually surprised because university ranking is very important. Do we have an office here in SIU that's dedicated only to collecting data and then putting it out to people, whether it's ranking or other things that is needed? If not, this is something really urgent. We need to work on it and have somebody, their job is just collecting data and then screening it and giving it in a better way to be used.
Yeah, this is going to hurt to hear. So a couple of years back, with all the furloughs, the cuts, and people leaving, and then we had a 7-year interim CIO, a guy named Scott. I don't know if you remember Scott, but Scott was here for quite some time. He was our chief, really, security officer and moved into a role of interim CIO. When I arrived, they were doing everything they could to even get to meet the deadline for the report itself. So that told me, it was not a lot of thought. It was just, we've got to turn this in. Let's check the box and do it. So there was no one meeting or even talking like we are today about, what we're submitting that would help our ranking. So I mentioned this earlier, we probably hurt ourselves in some areas for not reporting it correctly. It was done out of the CIO's office. And at that time, we didn't have a David Shirley. So we had no IEIR person. I think that person, last time we had them here, we also had a vice chancellor of research and dean of the graduate school. I forget his name, but that was years ago. So we're just now to the point where we can say with confidence, to your point, is that person now works in conjunction. It's David Shirley working in conjunction with folks who just process that information, but it's all vetted now with us. Provost, myself, David Shirley. It's the piece I talked about, the retention retreat, with making sure we got data integrity. And that's the piece we were missing, which is why I think we fell short in reporting. So, water under the bridge in some cases set us back a little bit, but we know where the water's leaking. We've been able to hopefully plug it up and make sure that we do a better job in reporting the information and not just checking the box and hoping someone does it.
And if I could just comment, I'll give you a good example of how we're now working together. So the Times Higher Ed is a ranking system that's used globally, and many countries use that for determining whether you can receive students that are sponsored by their government. So David Shirley, Peter Lee, which is Center for International Education, myself and others on their teams, we met to talk about those international ranking systems so that the people who will provide the data, the people with context about the data, we're all in the room together having those discussions so that we do not only participate in some of the rankings that maybe we have not in the past, but are important for our enrollment growth, but also that we are knowing what kinds of data we need to be collecting and what is the context. My former institution got itself in trouble just not having context. The person collecting the data said, you know, there were 11 international faculty on a campus that's similarly sized. Well, we all know that that's not reasonable, but the person didn't have the context. So I think at SIU, we now have the team together to be able to not only collect, but present accurate information that represents our institution. So I'm really excited about where this is headed.
Michael, did you have a question?
I just wanted to comment on the resource. I think the biggest problem is we're inundated with a lot of stuff all the time through our emails. If there was a way to kind of maybe look at overlap of things, or just condensing it down, would probably be more or less useful, just because if you have basically two groups doing the same thing or something that could be folded in, not trying to say like getting one person to do two jobs, but removing redundancy, and that might help with certainly.
Well, I'll say, that's a really great point. It's something that in the student space I've thought about, because there's been some studies where you get a group of people in the room and you look at how many emails the students receive in a week, and it's astronomical. But never have I thought about it from that faculty lens. So it's a really good point. We need to be doing that same type of exercise of how are we communicating with faculty, staff, and students, and making sure that it's clear, it's concise, it's just enough, just in time, versus everybody's just doing their own thing and it all becomes white noise.
Thank you. So we are approaching 3, what?
Operating paper.
So would you like to motion to extend the meeting?
Actually, we still have 2 minutes.
All right, really quickly.
Yes. So this is actually considered the operating papers. There is some confusions about who should be involved in the operating paper and who should give feedback for that. Is it possible to send some information about, the channel for the operating paper and who the faculty should send them to and who does have the right to be consulted before or after for the OP papers?
Absolutely. Just in general, though, Associate Provost Julianne Wallace is the one that is the liaison to work with faculty to bring operating papers forward, because we are trying to get those done this semester. But I will have her reach out to Dr. Rader through Senate of the process. We actually, for the first time, have the name of faculty in the various units so that she can be that resource. We know who's working on them, so that we're here to support you in getting those done. Post reorganization, this impacts promotion and tenure. We really need to get these finished up.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody that didn't have a chance to ask a question, I've been assured by the chancellor, can email him directly with your questions. So feel free. I hate cutting people off, but I also don't want to make this any longer than it needs to be. Thank you guys very much. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Great questions today too, by the way. Good stuff. I gotta go take a nap now after. Well, you gotta be ready for this meeting. You guys are tough, man.
Schedule doesn't allow for a nap.
As you should be. That's right, Dr. Reed. I hear you. All right, good luck. Hey, pray for me. I'm getting ready to hop on a John Deere tractor if you're out at the farms.
Good luck, good luck.
Yeah, thanks for that. Good luck. Yes, I'm gonna need it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Then all I need is a meeting to adjourn. I move to adjourn the meeting, that's what I meant. No second, all in favor, yay, we're good. Thank you, guys.